All right, let's jump into the Roto World headlines.
Yes.
And maybe one of the most interesting Roto World headlines that I'll ever have to read on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. The 49ers are reportedly unhappy about the firmness of the practice field at UNLV. No, this is not a headline from The Onion or any kind of bit here. And if you don't believe me, listen in on Roger Goodell and Kyle Shanahan discussing the 49ers practice surface.
I was trying to tweet out our show link, but they'll find us.
We'll get there.
All right, here we go.
We've had 23 experts out there. We've had the union out there. All of them think that's a very playable surface. It's softer than what they have practiced on, but that happens. It's well within all of our testing standards. It is something that we think all our experts, as well as neutral field inspectors, have all said unanimously that it's a playable field.
It is what it is. We'll be all right. It's the field we got. We'll be all right. We're good. No, we're not going to completely change our schedule and do something crazy. Like, we'll deal with what we got, and we're good.
A bit of an odd situation, to say the least.
Very odd situation. It makes me feel even better about Chiefs +2.
I was going to say, are the excuses mounting?
Jay Croucher, you still sticking by your Niners even though they're playing on a soft field?
They're rattled.
And they're rattled. Their ankles are going to be all squishy. And
Listen, to be fair, there are reports that the field is getting better every single day. So it is trending in the right direction. So by the time that Sunday comes around, we're going to be ready to win the Super Bowl.
That's right. All right. Another bit of news here regarding the Chiefs. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network, of course, reports Joe Thuney is dealing with a significant pectoral injury. This isn't really news necessarily, Jay. We knew Thuney has this, but it's a matter of if it's a significant pectoral injury, it's hard to imagine him suiting up for the Super Bowl.
I mean, it has to be a torn pec.
Right.
What other significant pec injury is there? Torn pec usually has you out like 6 months.
Yeah.
Is he going to play like 3 weeks after he tore it? I would suspect that he is not going to go. I think that's the sneaky little element of this Super Bowl that I don't think has been covered perhaps as much as it should, that like Joe Thuney is an excellent offensive lineman on an offensive line that is pretty weak outside of the interior. So they've got two somewhat suspect tackles. They might have a backup guard to replace Thuney. I suspect they will. And then Charles Omenihu is probably their best pure pass rusher from the edge if Chris Jones isn't lining up there. So they're down an elite offensive lineman. They're down their best pure edge rusher off the edge, pass rusher off the edge, and they already were at a bit of a talent deficit, I think, in this matchup. So, Niners -2. You guys can go to hell.
He's talking himself into it. You could hear it.
He is talking himself into it. Now, Thuney did not play against the Ravens, who have as good a defense as the Niners, I would argue, as well. And so they figured out some protections as well. They've mastered the art of just their offensive line just taking a couple of steps back before the snap and not having that called. Like, that's one of their best plays. So it's good. Like, you have to get a running start to get to Mahomes because, it's just like they just start backing up and then the ball gets hiked.
Yeah.
So it's,
Works every time.
it works every time.
I don't know how you guys are going to feel about Chiefs +2 when Jawan Taylor is just put in the blender by Nick Bosa over and over again. Did we over under 2.5 false starts for Jawan Taylor in this matchup?
Yeah, that's probably a safe bet. A safe bet right there. Listen, Mahomes is going to have to run. He's going to be.
Not something he's afraid to do.
He's going to run. Pacheco's going to run. Yeah, they'll figure it out.
Okay.
Whatever.
In some news away from the Super Bowl, the Eagles officially announced the hiring of Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. Nick Sirianni was thrilled to hire Moore. This is Moore's third team in the past 3 seasons now, Matthew, and Nick Sirianni on this hire. During Kellen's tenure as an NFL coach, he has helped to develop some of the best quarterbacks in the league and directed some of its best offenses. We are thrilled to have Kellen join our team.
This one's an interesting one for a few reasons. I am a Kellen Moore fan, and like the offense, Dak Prescott had his best. Had really productive years, both fantasy and NFL-wise, under Kellen Moore. So I'm a Kellen Moore fan, and I was all in on the Chargers offense this preseason because I'm like, Kellen Moore, he's gonna utilize him, and they're gonna send Quentin Johnson down. They didn't have a deep threat last year. They finally got one. They got Jalen Guyton back healthy. Eckler's gonna be, like a Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott mix. And I was wrong.
Well, everybody got hurt.
Listen, their offensive line got hurt. Obviously, Mike Williams goes down. Eckler was dealing with injuries early in the season. Like, it just went south. But 2 things happened. The Chargers offense regressed, you know what I mean? And you can argue his injuries or whatever, but Justin Herbert had a bad year.
Yeah,
he definitely regressed from the year before. And oh, by the way, I think I'm no Mike McCarthy fan, but the Cowboys offense was better without like I thought, oh boy, the Cowboys, and I was wrong. I was dead wrong on both those things, and so it's just like, maybe with Kellen Moore, I don't know. I genuinely don't know whether the situation in Dallas and with the Chargers was because of friction with the head coach, or not the players not buying in, or what have you. I don't know what went slightly south there, because he strikes me as a very bright guy, and people that I know that I respect, sing Kellen Moore's praises.
Yeah, to your point, I think it's a red flag that Dak Prescott had by far the best season of his entire career the moment that Kellen Moore left. Dak was, with a month to go, was the MVP favorite, which no one really contemplated before the season, because, early in the season he was 50-1, 60-1 to win MVP, and then became the favorite. And then the Chargers, Justin Herbert, I'm not sure, people seem to forget that he's like the 5th or the 6th best quarterback in football. Like, Justin Herbert is insanely good.
He's expected to be.
Yeah, well, he's got that talent level at least, but it seems like it hasn't been unlocked. Kellen Moore didn't seem to unlock it. I know they had injuries, but still you would have expected more from that offense. And now he gets a crack at, I guess, fixing Jalen Hurts and whatever happened to the Eagles offense this season.
And you could argue from a talent... You know me, Jalen Hurts is my guy. He's my ride or die, and that's fantasy-wise. But I'm curious, Connor, where you feel, because I know there are some NFL talent evaluators that would tell you between Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, and Jalen Hurts, Hurts is the worst quarterback that Kellen Moore will get to coach.
Yeah, you could easily make that argument, I think, right now with the season we just saw. I think what we have to keep in mind with this hire, it is Nick Sirianni's offense. Nick Sirianni will continue to construct the offense. Now you have a guy like Kellen Moore that's been in this situation under Mike McCarthy where the organization is what's more important. The Eagles were not an organized team. Whether it was the scripts last year, whether it was adjusting out of the half, the offense never looked in sync. Moore struggled with the Chargers, where he had full authority over the offense because he worked under a defensive head coach. Maybe this is a better fit for him, and maybe this is something that will improve the Eagles' offense while it's still Sirianni's actual car to drive.
Yeah, listen, they obviously have pieces. So between, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, obviously, and the running backs and Hurts, there's a lot of talent, and it's a nice offensive line, right? So, he's got, but sort of feels like this is last chance saloon. But, for him and Sirianni, to your point, it is Sirianni's offense, and Sirianni said that when talking about Brian Johnson. He sort of got painted in a corner. We played that clip, you remember?
Right. It went bad. It was him.
Right.
Yeah. It feels like a job that you take when you know it's last chance saloon, because I understand the Eagles they still have a ton of talent, still have a great offensive line, even without Jason Kelce. They have weapons. Hurts is still a very good quarterback, but it doesn't seem like a very attractive job just with the kind of allocation of credit. Some of the stories about Sirianni where Brian Johnson would call a play and Sirianni like, no, different one.
Right.
And so it's like, well, what do you actually, what is your role here?
Right.
And
there needs to be trust.
And it does feel like it's a kind of a one-year deal.
Sure.
Again, if the Eagles don't win the NFC East, if they don't make a far run in the playoffs, you could see them cleaning house. And so now you were with Brandon Staley, you lost that job, and now you're with Sirianni and you lose that. So it's a lot at stake for the Philadelphia Eagles offense this upcoming fantasy season.
One last thing on your question about Hurts. I will say this, because I agree. He's probably the least inspiring of all the quarterbacks he's worked with the last couple of years, but I think his highs are better than any high we've seen from both Herbert and Dak. When I think of the Super Bowl last year, I don't think we've seen a performance in a big game like that from any of those guys. So
I think that's very fair.
Hopefully Hurts is healthy this year and gets back to being that dude.
Yeah, it just felt like he was just broken by the end of the season. Like the wiring was off. Was it the safety that he took against Tampa Bay? That was
Playing
just
slow.
Completely bizarre. You contrast that to the guy who, even this season, the guy who marched down the field repeatedly against Buffalo, against Kansas City, who was just winning these clutch games for fun. He was a very good chance to win MVP of the league last season before he got hurt. He was magnificent in the playoffs. Did hand the Chiefs a touchdown on a platter, but outside of that was perfect in the Super Bowl.
Yes,
so
he was.
Certainly he's a franchise quarterback. There's no doubt about that.
And I was just gonna say, you wonder how much of that, he kept saying he was healthy, but it did feel like Jalen Hurts wasn't ever 100% healthy this year. Just he feel like he was laboring through stuff, and again, losing Shane Steichen, he's still a young quarterback, and so maybe there was just a disconnect between him and Brian Johnson, as you say. Again, if Jalen Hurts is in the huddle and okay, we're doing this, and then Sirianni no, we're doing this, and then Jalen Hurts is all right, what's my read again now?
Right.
It's confusing. So anyway, really interesting. But I love Jalen Hurts. He's my guy. But we're talking. I talk fantasy-wise, and now we're talking just NFL.
Our last bit of news here, we got to hear from Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, who said they're no fluke and they aim now to sustain winning. Let's take a listen to Holmes calling out some reporters for saying he made bad draft picks.
When you look back at those picks, and those picks were not welcome by many in this room. You know, Dave, you wanted us to pick a quarterback. You didn't want us to pick Penei Sewell. You know, people didn't want us to wait till the 4th round to draft a wide receiver. We had one extra pick in 2021. We had a comp third. That was Iffy Melifonwu. Carlos, I know you said that was a miss, but that was the only extra. That was the only extra picks. I give probably 2 people credit in this room that said, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong, and I appreciate that, and I respected that. But just the other about, you know, you knew they were wrong. And then oh man, these rookies are playing so well. Or you hear many people gave him backlash. Or, oh man, there were some people that, no, it wasn't many. It was you. You I'm reading it like, no, you gave him backlash.
Jay, better victory lapper, Brad Holmes or Matthew Berry? I think this is a tight one.
It was special. It was a great performance. I think he's entitled to do that.
Yes.
I would guess that he's going to be named Executive of the Year, given that what he achieved.
It'll be close.
Yeah,
between him and Nick Sirianni.
that's fair. But I think those will be your top 2. And look, some of these picks, like Sam Laporta at 34, home run. Brian Branch at 45, home run. I get, Jack Campbell, 18, we'll see. He wasn't amazing this season. He's a rookie. And then Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, which I think everyone thinks is a home run. Let's see. They took a running back. They took a running back at 12, and they have David Montgomery, who had a really good season, and then they have an amazing offensive line. I think that this is the exact type of team that has the infrastructure where you don't necessarily need to spend pick 12 on a running back. But look, Gibbs is awesome, and he was fantastic, and he had meaningful moments in the playoffs, so we'll see with that. But I don't know. It's just always risky when you do that, because if it doesn't come around next year, then you're not going to look so good.
I like that he kept receipts. It is interesting, right? Especially when you see kind of the year that DeAndre Swift had in Philadelphia. They had Swift. Swift in theory could have been Gibbs behind that offensive line if they just used him. Philadelphia used Swift in a way that Detroit didn't, and it's sort of interesting. Obviously, health had a part to do with Swift's time in Detroit as well. I think if I was to give one criticism of his victory lap, is that I've always found it's best to actually get up from the podium and do a real lap. I feel like my victory laps are a little bit better because at least I hustle. I get up and I actually do.
Or you make me or Connor do it for you.
That's right.
Yes. You're remote.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm remote or. Right, so Brad Holmes could have gotten an intern or somebody to do it. I'm just saying, yeah.
I still think they should have taken Christian Gonzalez at 12 over Jahmyr Gibbs. They really could have used the corner this season. They could use one going forward. So, there's probably some other guys as well. But Gibbs was great.
He's done a great job. The entire organization has done a great job of taking a team that was winless, to basically was 8 minutes away from going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I do think that
should have gone to the Super Bowl.
It's such a part of their identity, and that's why I really don't like the discourse against Dan Campbell and his decisions in the NFC title game. Those were coin flip decisions to go for it or to kick, and it's been the identity of their team. Alex Anzalone talked about this. The reason we went from 0-10-1 a couple of years ago to being minus 850 to make the Super Bowl in the second half of the NFC title game is because we were aggressive and because this is our mindset as an organization. So he's entitled to do that, and Holmes is entitled to take his victory lap.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.